It is the end of October, and that means the rut is almost here. And while many hunters think that the rut is the best time to tag a mature buck, and they're certainly not wrong, but I feel that the pre-rut is even better. The pre-rut has bucks starting to get a little more aggressive, but you can still pattern them. Sometimes when the rut hits, those bucks, they go doe crazy and run wild, and you never know when or where they're going to show up. So with now being one of the best times to be out in the woods, I thought it would be a good idea to go over 3 pre-rut hunting tips. And the first tip is to focus on rubs and scrapes. During the pre-rut, bucks are making more rubs and scrapes than any time before that. This means it is so much easier for you to key in on specific locations. I found that rubs and scrapes made in brushy draws to be some of the most productive areas during the pre-rut and even the rut. This is because not only are those bucks more aggressive, but the draw is a pinch point, meaning that you can get a little closer, you know a little more about where they're going to go. And that brushy cover makes them feel more secure. Valleys are also great places to find pre-rut rubs and scrapes. Now typically I avoid valleys just because the wind is a little more unpredictable down there, but the pre-rut and the rut is the only time you will find me setting up in valleys, especially if I find some fresh rubs and scrapes. And the second tip is to break out the calls. And while technically you can break out the grunt call during the early season, I typically don't bring it out until late October when the pre-rut starts. Bucks are more apt to respond to a grunt when their testosterone levels are on the rise and they're staking out their territories. If you haven't seen one of my earlier videos on beginner deer calls and how to use them, give that a watch. And you'll have to forgive me, it was one of my first videos. I think it was like my 4th or 5th one on the channel, and I am pretty cringy in it, even more cringy than I am now. But I do think that it's helpful. It goes over the basics of them and when you would want to use them and kind of the theory behind it. Now, I don't actually demonstrate each call. Somebody commented on that video saying that I didn't do the calls because I didn't want to embarrass myself and all that, which I embarrass myself plenty, so that's obviously not it. But the reason I didn't demonstrate them is because I don't find it very helpful to listen to somebody else use a call that I probably don't have when I could just go straight to the source. If I want to know how a buck grunt should sound, I'm just going to listen to real bucks grunting. There's plenty of videos of that on YouTube or anywhere else on the internet. Same with how a rattle should sound. I'm going to listen to bucks actually rattling. It just doesn't make sense to me to imitate somebody imitating something else. Why not just go straight to the source? But that's just me. If you want to know how to use your specific deer call, look that up. They've got videos. A lot of the manufacturers have videos on how to actually use their specific calls. So try looking that up. Now I'm gonna hop off my soapbox. No more rants. But the only thing I will say that's kind of a repeat of what's in that deer call video is you just don't want to sound like the biggest buck around. You don't want to grunt like you're, a huge 5.5-year-old buck, or you're not going to want to rattle like you're just 2 monster deer going at it. You want to sound like, younger deer. You want to sound like an immature buck. Something that a bigger buck's going to want to come in and challenge. If you sound like the biggest buck around, the other bucks are just going to be like, yeah, no thanks. And the third pre-rut hunting tip is to break out those scents. Now, I don't use a whole lot of lure scents. Most of the time, all I'm using is some of that Tinks Dopey that I'll spray on my boots every once in a while. But I have used buck lures in the past and have had great success. Now I can only speak to the Tinks brand of lure scents because that's all I've used. I've used those buck bombs that you hang in the trees, and I've had quite a few deer coming in and checking those out. And the only reason I don't use them a lot is because it can get kind of expensive refilling all that stuff. Hunting is hard enough on my bank account as it is, but they can work well. Now, the only things I think you should stay away from are those aerosol cans that are like, you use them like smoke bombs. Again, this is just my opinion, but I don't see how those things can last long enough to pique a buck's interest. I mean, that buck would have to be close enough for that 30 seconds of scent that it does put out to pique its interest. If it gets too far downwind, the wind would just dissipate it or just go up into the sky. I mean, there's just no telling what you're going to do. I mean, I think it's just a waste of money. But again, that's just my opinion. If you like them, they work for you, by all means use them. So those were 3 pre-rut hunting tips. If you have any more pre-rut tactics you'd like to share, leave those down in the comments below. Hit that like button if you like this video, share it if you found it helpful, and make sure that you are subscribed so you can stay informed.